So let's look now at what are probably the two most popular ways to display your data if it's categorical. Okay? So you only use a pie chart or a bar graph if you have categorical data. If it's quantitative data, we got to do something else. So the distribution of a categorical variable lists the categories and gives either your counts or percents of individuals or proportions, which is your percent as a decimal, that fall into that category. Okay? So when you do that, if they add up to 100%, you can make pie charts. Pie charts show the distribution of a categorical variable where the pie represents the whole and the size of the slices represent the percent of the pie that they take up. Or you can make bar graphs where the heights represent your counts or your percents. And frequency is another word that we use sometimes for the counts. We talk about the frequency, the number that fall into each category. Okay, so let's look at some examples here. These are just some that came with the textbook. So in 2000, the U.S. solid waste, we had different categories: food scraps, glass, metals, and so forth. You can see there, and then our numbers, which are in millions of tons. So there were 25.9 million tons of food scraps in the U.S. in the year 2000, and that made up 11.2% of the total. Okay, so we can represent our data there in a table. We can take the last column there, the percents, and use that to make a pie chart. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with pie charts. You got the whole thing's 100%. Paper, you can see on the pie chart, a good thing is you can see kind of relative, what's the largest, what's the smallest, and so forth. We can see really quickly most of the waste. The largest category was paper. We can look in the table over here and see that it's 37.4%. Okay, so they've shaded in orange here 37.4% of the circle. Okay. The metals is a lot smaller there. Metals was 7.8%, so that piece is taking up 7.8% of the area of the whole thing. Okay, so pie charts, if they add up to 100%, we can use those, and it's a good way to see what's your largest categories, your smallest, and so forth. Okay, they're kind of hard. I'll do one in a minute by hand, as quote unquote by hand, but it's a lot easier to make pie charts with a computer or software. They're kind of hard to draw by hand because it's really hard to accurately say I'm going to draw 7.8% of a circle. Right? Most people can't do that. Bar graphs are a lot easier to draw by hand, but we can also make nice ones with software. There you just put your categories on one axis, which could be the X or the Y axis, the horizontal or vertical axis. Probably more typical maybe to see them on the X axis, on the horizontal axis. But you list your labels: food, glass, metal, paper. Sometimes you got to abbreviate to fit them in there. And then the height of the bar would represent either your counts, like 25.9 food scraps. The height of that is on my scale here, 25.9, if I could get that accurate on the picture. Or you could do one that actually had percents. It could go up to 11.2% to show percents. So bar graphs can be used pretty much in all cases. You can use percents or heights. The pie chart can only be used if it adds up to 100%. Okay? So here's an example I like to do in class with some numbers here. We'll see if I can find a way to do this by hand and with a software. So let's try to make a couple of graphs ourselves. Okay, we're going to make a bar graph, and I took one of my actual classes and I counted majors. I had 1 undecided, 17 business, 6 nursing, 3 education, 2 criminal justice, 2 political science, and 1 health and physical education. So if we want to make a bar graph of that, tell you what, I'll just do these with Excel. It's a lot easier. It's hard to find a way to draw nice here on the computer. So let's see. If we want to do a bar graph with Excel, the first thing we have to do is list the categories and the counts. So let's see. I'm just going to start in a cell here, leave a little room. Oops, sorry about that. We have undecided, and business, nursing, education, CJ, criminal justice, we got poli-sci, abbreviate a little bit there, let's see, and we got health and physical education. And then looking back at my data, we had 1 undecided, 17 business, 6 nursing, 3 education, 2 criminal justice, 2 political science, and 1 health and physical education. So if I was doing this by hand, I would just make kind of an L shape, an X and a Y axis. I would put my categories in no particular order. I'd probably just do what's listed here. Put the categories under the horizontal axis, pick a scale that goes beyond 17 to see the heights on the y-axis, and then just make bars of those heights. I'd make a bar of height 1 over undecided, a bar of height 17 over business, and so forth. In Excel, I can just do the, let's see, left click and drag around my data, go to insert. Of course, different versions of Excel, it might look slightly different, but go to insert and you should be able to find the charts. And let's see, we can do a pie chart, but let's do a bar graph. So I pick on the bar graph. You can pick different types. I'm just going to go with the regular bar graph here, and then drag it over. And so there you have your categories: undecided, business, nursing, education, CJ, poli-sci, health and physical education. You put those on one axis, and then your heights would be the number that fall into those categories. Okay, so I have the height of this bar is 17 because there's 17 business majors. You can change things. You could go in and put a title if you wanted, and maybe majors. Let's see, if I right click, I can add labels, and it puts the actual numbers on, which is kind of nice. You can see there's 17 there, 6, 3, so you don't have to approximate when you look across. So you can fancy it up a bit, but the basic way, you just put your categories, put the counts, or if you wanted to do percents, put the percents, and then select the whole thing, go to insert, and pick the bar graph and the one that you want to make. Okay. Pie chart, I'll go ahead and do it for these. I'm going to delete that. Pie chart, same way. It'll do percents for you. You don't have to worry about that. You just put the counts, click on the pie chart, pick the pie chart, and there you go. Okay. So we have majors. So this one would be pretty hard to draw by hand, but the computer makes a nice one. Again, the quick thing I can see there, and they're color coded. The orange is business. I can pretty quickly see that business majors is the largest category. The blue ones here are the smallest categories. But it might be helpful to right click on it and go to add labels. You can add data labels, and it'll put the counts there. You can also do percents. If you right click again, now I can format the labels. And let's see if I can drag it to where you can see I get a list over here on the side, and you can click that you want to do percent. You can do value and percent, or just percent if you want. Value and percent, you see them both. So just do percent. Sorry, right now I have value. Let me click over to percent, and you can see the percents. Okay. Sometimes it has to list them outside of the pie pieces if it's too small. So that's the way to pretty easily make bar graphs and pie charts with Excel. And there's other software you could use, but Excel is a nice one. And if you're a University of North Georgia student, everybody, as part of your fees, you get access to Microsoft Office. Okay. Again, you could try to draw these things by hand. The pie charts are pretty tough because, again, it's pretty hard for somebody to approximate 10% of the circle there. I do my second example that I had. Let's see if I drag it over here. This one I can draw pretty accurately by hand, but I'll do it with Excel anyway. So make a pie chart showing the class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior of the students in this class, where there was 1 freshman, 15 sophomores, 13 juniors, and 3 seniors. Okay. So again, let me add a new window here. So put your labels. So we've got freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and then the counts: 1, 15, 13, and 3. If you did do this by hand, you would have to compute the percents. Let me compute here in Excel. I'm going to do equals to tell it I'm doing math. And actually, first thing let's do is get our sum. How many people were in the class? I can get Excel to do that by typing equals sum and select these numbers. Okay, so we got 32 people in the class. So my percent would be part out of whole. I could do equals. You can just click on it to select it, divided by 32. And I can drag down. So these are what we would call proportions. The percents is decimals. I could take those and multiply by 100 to get percent. So 100 times that to get about 3%. So if you were doing this by hand, you would have to maybe take a calculator, but I'd have to take 1 divided by 32 to get 3%. 15 divided by 32 to find it's about 47%, and so forth. These, it's kind of interesting, these almost add to 50-50. The 40.6, the 9.3, those add up almost exactly to 50%. The 46.8 and the 3.1, those add really close to 50%. That makes it not too hard to draw by hand, close to half the circle. But again, if I want to do it with Excel, I just select them there, insert pie chart. You can do a 3D pie chart if you want. It just looks a little fancier like that. Again, if you want to put the numbers on there, right click and go to data labels and it'll add your counts. If you right click and go to format data labels, over on the side that you can't see here, I can select percents. Let's take values off and just do percents. And there you go. So that's how you can make your own pie charts and bar graphs with Excel. Occasionally I ask somebody to draw a bar graph on a test. I usually don't ask someone to draw a pie chart on the test because it's pretty hard to do without software, okay? Unless you have really nice numbers like the one that we just looked at. Okay? But you definitely want to know how to read and interpret bar graphs and pie charts and be able to make bar graphs. They're not too hard to draw by hand.